It was the kind of rain that soaked your bones. The kind that made you drive a little faster just to get home. But that night, Emma Walker did something most people wouldn't. She stopped. She didn't ask for a name or a story. Just opened her door. What followed wasn't charity. It was the beginning of something that would change everything, starting with a knock. This story of injustice and eventual redemption deserves to be shared. So, hit that like button and subscribe to follow more true stories of courage in the face of discrimination. Now, let's rewind to see how this explosive situation began. It started on a narrow 2-lane stretch outside Willow Ridge, Montana. The kind of road where headlights vanish into mist and nobody pulls over unless something's already gone wrong. The rain had been falling for hours, slicing through the mountain air in cold sheets. Windshield wipers struggled against the storm. But Emma Walker kept driving, her grip tight on the wheel of her rusted blue pickup. She was already late, again. Her daughter, Lucy, would be home with her favorite stuffed bunny and a mug of lukewarm milk. Probably asking if Mama had to work so much. Emma had stayed late at the bakery to help her boss, whose delivery van broke down just before closing. She didn't complain, she never did. Not when the heater in her trailer gave out. Not when the bills came due before the paycheck. Not even when the cupboards grew bare. She lived on. Just enough gas. Just enough food. Just enough strength. That night, all she wanted was to get home, dry her clothes, and kiss her daughter goodnight. Then she saw him. A figure walking alone on the shoulder, hunched forward against the wind, soaked to the skin. He limped with every step, dragging one foot slightly, and a heavy backpack sagged behind him like dead weight. His clothes clung to him, drenched, torn, and his head was bowed low, like he didn't expect anyone to notice. Emma's stomach clenched. Every instinct born of late-night news stories and small-town caution told her to keep driving. You don't pick up strangers at night. Especially not alone. Especially not now. But then she heard her father's voice. The same one she remembered from another rainy night years ago. If nobody else stops, maybe it's because you're supposed to. Before she knew it, her foot had eased onto the brake. The truck slowed to a crawl, headlights cutting through the curtain of rain. The man didn't look up. Maybe he thought she was pulling over for herself. Maybe he stopped hoping people would care. But as she rolled down the window, her voice barely louder than the rain, he finally turned toward her. "Hey," she said gently, "you all right out here?" His hood fell back slightly, revealing a face etched with fatigue, and a jagged scar trailing from temple to jaw. Like fire had tried to erase him. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said, his voice low, hoarse. "I didn't say you were," Emma replied, holding his gaze. And just like that, two strangers, one soaked, one scared, shared a moment that would set something greater in motion. She reached across the bench seat and pushed the door open. "I'm headed toward the old base road. I can drop you at the gate." He hesitated. Then slowly, he nodded. "Thanks." The truck smelled like wet canvas and worn leather. As the stranger climbed in, Emma caught a glimpse of the army insignia faded on his torn sleeve. He winced as he settled into the passenger seat, favoring his right side, trying not to let it show. The rain kept drumming on the roof, steady and relentless, filling the silence between them like a soft warning. "You served?" Emma asked quietly, eyes on the slick road ahead. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "Just discharge." She glanced sideways, noting how the scar trailed down his neck and vanished beneath the collar of his soaked shirt. He looked weathered, not old, but used up in a way that warred as to a man. "Honorable?" she asked, a gentle tease hidden in her tone. A flicker of a smile broke through the tension on his face. "Is there any other kind?" They didn't talk much after that. No radio, no small talk, just the hum of the heater and the sound of rain hitting metal. Emma glanced at him again during a red light, his hair cropped military tight. His fists resting stiffly on his knees, like he was still waiting for orders. There was a quiet ache in him, one she didn't know the shape of, but felt all the same. "You from around here?" she asked. "No, just passing through, heading to Billings." "That's, what, 30 miles? 32, on foot." She didn't reply, but she gripped the wheel tighter. The weight of that number settled somewhere deep in her chest. "What about the VA?" she finally asked. He let out a dry, Humorless laugh. They helped me out the door. Not much after that. A rusted sign for the old military turnoff came into view. Emma slowed the truck. I can let you off here, she said softly. But he didn't move. I lost my ID, he admitted. In the fire. They said it had come in the mail. But for now, I got nothing. She looked at him for a long moment. Something in his eyes, guarded, tired, almost ashamed, struck her harder than any words. That was the look of someone who'd carried more than any one person ever should. And she had room on the couch. 10 minutes later, he was in her kitchen, dripping onto a folded towel while Lucy peeked around the corner clutching her bunny. Emma handed him a mug of tea, showed him where the coffee would be in the morning, and didn't ask him a single question. He didn't offer much either. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. But that night, something deeper than logic told her this man didn't need a handout. He needed a place to rest where no one asked why. And so she gave it. The next morning, he was gone. No footsteps, no note, just the smell of coffee she hadn't made, and a purple heart medal lying beside the sink. Hey, if this moment stirred something in you, even just a little, comment the number 1 below. If you're still listening with me. Emma stood in her tiny kitchen, the morning sun cutting through the blinds in tired lines. The towel he'd used was folded neatly on the counter, not a wrinkle out of place. And there it was, still sitting there like it didn't belong in a world as quiet as hers, a purple heart. She didn't touch it at first. Her hands hovered just above the counter like the metal was sacred. Like her fingerprints didn't deserve to be on something that had seen that kind of pain. Eventually, she wrapped it gently in a dishcloth and placed it in the drawer next to Lucy's crayon drawings. Rubber bands. And old batteries. She didn't tell anyone, not her best friend Rachel, not her mother, who would have filled the silence with judgment, not even Lucy, because how do you explain something you don't quite understand yourself? 12 days passed. The towel stayed folded, the drawer stayed shut, but real life didn't wait. It came like it always did, loud, heavy, and cruel. A thick envelope landed in her mailbox one morning from the Willow Ridge Credit Union. Emma didn't even have to open it to know what it said. Foreclosure. The late payments had stacked up higher than her hopes. 30 days. That's how long she had before the house her dad built. The backyard Lucy planted her first flower in. The creaky floor that told her where her child was tiptoeing, all of it, would be gone. She tried everything. Extra shifts at the bakery. Selling her mother's old jewelry. Midnight cake orders for birthday parties she never got invited to. She even canceled the Wi-Fi until Lucy came home crying that she couldn't do her schoolwork. She kept smiling at customers. Kept pouring coffee into cracked foam cups. Kept wiping down tables long after the bell over the door stopped ringing. No one noticed she was breaking. No one ever noticed Grace Bennett either. Not really. Until one Tuesday, when Rachel finally saw it. Emma had cleaned the same counter 3 times in 10 minutes. All right, spill, Rachel said, arms crossed. You forgot my snack day. Gave Officer Tim his coffee without cinnamon. And didn't even laugh at my terrible date story. Something's wrong. Emma hesitated, but then it came out, not all of it. Just enough. About the man in the rain. The couch. The medal. The letter. The mortgage. Rachel didn't gasp. Didn't judge. She just leaned on the counter and said, "That sucks." Emma laughed, a breathy, broken thing, but it was real. "Yeah," she whispered, "it really does." The next morning, after dropping Lucy off at school, Emma took the long way home. The truck passed the same landmarks she'd seen for years, the old silo. The gas station with the broken O in open, until she reached the VFW hall at the edge of town. A hand-painted sign hung crooked on the rail. Veteran Support Breakfast. All welcome. She almost drove past. But something inside her remembered that folded towel. That unopened letter. And the medal she didn't earn but now kept safe. And for the first time since the knock of foreclosure echoed through her world, Emma turned in. She had nothing left to give. But she showed up anyway. The VFW hall was nothing special. A few folding tables, metal chairs that creaked under the weight of memory, and a coffee pot that had probably been there since the Gulf War. Emma walked in carrying a basket of honey-oat loaves she'd baked from what little flour she had left. It wasn't much, but it was something. She moved quietly, setting the bread down, pouring coffee, wiping down tables. She didn't expect anyone to notice. She wasn't there to be seen. But someone saw her. He sat near the back. Maybe in his 30s, lean and sharp-eyed. His posture gave him away, military. As Emma reached for his empty plate, he looked up. "You're Emma Walker, right?" She froze. Her hand tightened around the edge of the plate. "Yeah," she said slowly. He stood and wiped his hands on a napkin. "I think you know someone I served with." Emma's heart skipped. "Nate?" The man nodded, then reached into his jacket. From inside, he unfolded a worn photograph. 6 soldiers standing in front of a rusted Humvee. Desert sand in the background. One of them stood off to the side, half his face wrapped in gauze, smiling despite the crutch under his arm. It was Nate. "He sent this a few weeks ago." The man said he met someone in Montana. Someone who reminded him of who he used to be. Emma stared at the photo. Nate looked so different, not broken, not lost, whole, surrounded. "I didn't know he had anyone left," she whispered. The man shrugged. "He doesn't talk much, not since the fire. But when he does, he means it." He handed her the photo. "Thank you for seeing him. Not many people do." Emma nodded slowly, her fingers trembling as she held the image. That night, she pinned it above her kitchen sink, right where she could see it while washing dishes. She didn't frame it. It didn't need one. It just belonged. For the first time in weeks, she felt a shift, like maybe the kindness she gave hadn't vanished into the storm. Maybe it had found a way forward. 3 weeks later, the phone rang. It was the bank. Emma already knew the voice, polite, practiced, but not warm. "Unless something changes dramatically, Ms. Walker, there's not much more we can do." She hung up without saying a word, just stared at the wall. The chipped paint around the light switch. The spot where Lucy had once drawn a heart in crayon. That night, after dinner, Emma stood by the window. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the front step. In the drawer beneath her hand lay the purple heart. The letter, and now the photo. She didn't know what she was waiting for. A miracle, maybe. What she got was a knock. At exactly 7:03 p.m., she opened the door. And there he was, Nate Carter, upright, clean-shaven, standing in full military uniform. No rain, no limp, no hoodie soaked to the bone. Just presence. And behind him, 2 black SUVs. And 2 men in uniform. In his hand, an envelope. "This is long overdue," he said, voice steady. "But it's only the beginning." Emma didn't move at first. She just stood there in the doorway, one hand still gripping the dish towel, the other frozen midair like her body hadn't caught up with her heart. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nate stepped forward, slower this time, not out of pain, but with intention. "It's everything you never asked for," he said, "but everything you deserve." The taller man beside him offered his hand. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Mason Ellis, U.S. Army. We're here on behalf of the Office of Veteran Community Engagement in the 5th Recon Division." Emma blinked. "I don't understand. We'd like to come in," the captain said gently, "if now's a good time." Behind her, Lucy peeked around the corner, bare feet quiet on the wood floor, bunny in hand. Emma turned slightly. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Just some visitors." Captain Ellis crouched to her eye level. "Hi there, I'm Mason, and this is Nate. We're real soldiers." Lucy nodded shyly. "But we're not here on a mission," Nate said, kneeling beside her. "We're here to thank your mom." "Why?" she asked quietly. Nate looked up at Emma, his eyes soft but full of something deeper, something whole. Because when no one else did, she saw someone worth saving. They sat at the kitchen table, Emma, Nate, the captain, and Master Sergeant Reyes, a broad-shouldered man who didn't say much but gave nods that felt like promises. Lucy disappeared into her room, only after being promised a scoop of ice cream later. Nate began to speak. He told her what she hadn't known, that the night she picked him up, he wasn't just lost, he was at his end, discharged from rehab, with nowhere to go, no wallet, no ID, and one unopened bottle in his bag that he didn't plan to save. "I wasn't walking to somewhere," he said. "I was walking away." Emma's eyes welled, her hand trembled on the table. But she said nothing, just listened. "You didn't ask questions," he said. You didn't flinch at the scars. You gave me tea, a towel, silence. You treated me like a human being. Captain Ellis opened a black folder and slid a document across the table. Emma stared at the header, Certificate of Community Honor. Beneath the seal of the U.S. Army. For exceptional compassion, courage, and quiet service to a wounded veteran. Ms. Emma Walker is hereby recognized as an honorary civilian contributor to veteran resilience and recovery initiatives. Emma blinked hard. That's the Secretary of the Army's name. Yes, ma'am, the captain said. Sergeant Reyes placed a second document beside the first. This one was simpler, no formal language. No seal, just a confirmation. Mortgage at 94 North Line Road, fully paid. Fully forgiven. Her home, saved. Emma covered her face with both hands, shoulders shaking. Why would you do this? She whispered. Nate answered without hesitation. Because what you did wasn't just for me. It reminded us, me and every man and woman I've served with, that quiet kindness still exists. And it matters. Before they left, Nate placed a small velvet box in her hand. Inside, a heavy silver challenge coin engraved with a single line. She didn't ask, she just acted. Emma held it to her chest. Words failed her, but something else spoke louder than words. She had been seen, and she had mattered. For the first time in months, Emma Walker slept through the night. No late-night pacing, no calculator open beside half-finished bills. No imagining the sound of her roof being repossessed piece by piece. The house was safe. The porch light stayed on without guilt, and the quiet that used to echo loneliness now felt like peace. But peace, Emma would soon learn, can be fragile. It came in the form of a voicemail. Dry, clipped, and polite. Hey Emma, it's Greg from County Services. Sorry to bother you, but something's come up with your property records. You might want to swing by. That knot in her gut, the one she hadn't missed, tightened instantly. She walked into the office 2 days later. The air stale with old coffee and dusty filing cabinets. Greg, the same clerk who'd filed her taxes for years, looked like a man about to tell her a dog had died. I know the Army cleared your mortgage, he began, shuffling through papers, but when we scanned your deed, an old lien showed up. Emma leaned in, her pulse suddenly louder than the air conditioner. Back in 2001, Greg continued, your father took out a private land loan after your mom passed. It was never officially discharged. That debt's been sold to a third-party firm. And now, they've filed a claim. She blinked. What does that mean? Greg winced. Technically, they now own the acreage behind your house. Everything beyond the main structure, your garden, the chicken coop, even the shed. Emma felt the floor tilt beneath her. That's Lucy's backyard, she said numbly. That's where she planted her first sunflower. That's where. She couldn't finish. I'm sorry, Greg offered gently. We can contest it, but they've done this before. They're betting you won't have the resources to fight. Emma drove home in silence, fists clenched on the steering wheel. The same road that once brought Nate Carter to her porch now carried the weight of injustice right back to her door. She sat in her truck outside the house for 10 full minutes before she pulled out her phone. The message she typed was short, honest. Hey Nate, I know you've already done more than I could ever ask, but something's come up. She hit send and whispered into the empty cab. Please, let kindness keep going. The next morning, Nate called. He didn't ask for details. He just listened. After a long pause, he said, I'll take care of it. 3 days later, a man in a charcoal suit walked into County Services. He carried a federal ID, a leather briefcase, and the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you'll win. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just handed Greg a packet of documents, stamped with a federal seal and signed by a judge. The lien was invalid, fraudulent. The company behind it? A shell agency now under federal investigation. It was over. This time, for real. Emma didn't cry when the call came. Not right away. She climbed into her truck, drove to the edge of town, and sat on the same hill where her father once taught her how to roll start a stalled engine. And there, finally, with no one watching, she let it all go. Spring came early to Willow Ridge. The lilacs along Emma's fence bloomed with a softness that matched the quiet inside her home. The garden behind the shed, once nearly lost, was now full of new life. Every morning, Lucy ran barefoot through the dew, checking for eggs in the coop her mom once feared she'd never see again. The land was truly hers now. But something else had changed, something deeper than deeds and documents. Emma began to move through the world differently. Not louder, not prouder, but steadier. She no longer lowered her eyes at the grocery store. She met people with a quiet smile. Not because she needed recognition, but because she had survived. She had mattered, and she knew it. Then came the letter. A plain envelope with the seal of the Veteran Resilience Network. Inside, a request. Would she consider becoming a community advisor? Not because she was an expert, but because she had lived it. Emma hesitated, but she remembered Nate, drenched and silent in her passenger seat, carrying pain he didn't know how to name, and how all she did was not look away. So she said yes. She showed up to every meeting, spoke only when she had something true to say, and the room changed. Slowly, others came, veterans, widows, teenagers, people who just needed to be seen. Emma's garden now has a wooden sign. Free produce for any veteran. No questions, no limits, and in smaller letters below it, what you grow in quiet places will one day feed someone you'll never meet. Let this be your reminder. You don't need a title to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is to stop, to see, to care. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to believe kindness still matters. Because it does.